I think she is the Stephen Curry of women's college basketball. I think she has changed the dynamics of the way the game is played. I think the way she plays, the pizzazz, is like she's probably the most prolific scorer the game of basketball has ever seen.
Unmatched.
I am unwilling, and maybe it's more the Kobe mentorship around me, to say that she is great yet. I think she is the most prolific scorer the game has ever seen. I hold great, or the levels of immortality, or the pantheon to when you win championships. That's just me.
Former Duke point guard Jay Williams really went there with Caitlin Clark.
Listen, it wasn't a great weekend for people who I like watching on television. Like watching Jay Williams. I like watching Kenny Smith. But Jay Williams saying Caitlin Clark isn't great yet because she hasn't won a championship. And so I guess Larry Bird wasn't a great college player, right? We can go out on the list of people who aren't great players because they didn't win a championship.
Rich Eisen, whose insights are consistently solid, rebuked Williams.
So Diana Taurasi, when you win 3 consecutive championships, 2-time National Player of the Year, it has to culminate with the chip. It has to. I mean, Breanna Stewart, if we're talking about GOAT legends of the game, she's won 4 chips. 4 chips, multiple National Players of the Year. So I'm not saying that she's not at a high level, but for it to go to the states of immortality, in my opinion, it has to culminate with your team winning a championship.
It's just kind of a drawn-out, silly argument to make. Honestly, it's tiresome.
And by the way, Iowa, not exactly the hotbed of women's college basketball prior to Caitlin Clark's arrival there. And I didn't get that one. And I can't wait to see more Caitlin Clark. This tournament, I will be watching Iowa tournament games, and I will be following her career. By the way, does anybody shoot a basketball like Caitlin Clark and have the rim swallow it up? She's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
And then to say, well, I don't consider her great until she wins a championship, which is, what does that even mean?
He's right. He's 1,000% right. Fellow analyst Jay Billis would utter, she's a cultural phenomenon unlike anything we've ever seen in basketball, and it goes beyond just the scoring record. She's not just elevated the women's game, she's elevated the game. In that regard, he will not see her again. She's been incredible for sports, for basketball. In my view, great isn't even a discussion. We can argue about greatest, but we can't argue about great. From On3. Trying to defend himself, Jay Williams would comment further that not having Caitlin Clark in that upper echelon isn't diminishing her. However, Billis responded, it is a little, with a laugh. Jay tried again to detail his position on Clark's greatness. Quote, the way everybody sells her all the time, it almost feels like she's already stamped as one of the greatest to ever do it. Kyle Bowlesby would write on Twitter, everyone has their own metric for great, and Jay says you need titles. That's fine and fair. He uses Diana Taurasi, Breanna Stewart as examples at the University of Connecticut, UConn. Clark chose to build at a place that had nowhere near the history. Pretty sure Clark would have multiple national titles at South Carolina and UConn. That's true. The legend of Clark is she stayed home and led hometown team to heights they hadn't seen since 1993. From Awful Announcing. Instead of joining a powerhouse program, she opted to forge her own path at Iowa, becoming a cornerstone for their turnaround. While championships ultimately define success in hoops, at least in Williams' eyes, it's important to remember the sport's inherent team nature. While winning a title might elude her critics, Caitlin Clark's singular effort has undeniably propelled Iowa into the national spotlight. As the conversation went on, former Virginia Tech head coach Seth Greenberg weighed in as well. She's unique. She is special. A person I compare her to is Pistol Pete. Her scoring's phenomenal, her passing, her feel, her IQ. She makes it easier for everyone else on the floor. She is unique. Men, women, I don't care. She's just different. You win a championship, you don't win a championship. To me, she's just different. Before we get into it, if there are any stories we missed, if there are any that you would like to submit, get at me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. DMs are open. I welcome your submissions. On top of this, the network is doing a membership drive. It helps us live. It helps sustain life on the network overall, and it keeps us independent. If you can, please do become a member today. I will leave a link in the description box below. It is tyt.com/join. Here's what I hate about this analysis from Jay Williams. And Jay was a phenomenal college basketball player. I am clearly, Chicago Bulls fan. And I wish what happened to him did not, because I think he would have been a very good pro. When I hear these different arguments, it continues to go into, which is fine, a completely subjective, dumb sports guy, girl, whatever argument, which is championships define legacy. I think that is part of it. I think especially when you are the head honcho, the number one, then it'll carry even more weight. And that's not to say that when you are the most important player and you don't win, that it should stain your legacy. I think that's bad. And I think that's wrong. Because the last time I checked, this isn't 1-on-1. Not even 2-on-2. Not even 1-on-5. There's 10 people on the court. In football, there's 22. In soccer, there's 22. So when we hyper-focus on this is the line. Did you win a championship? Did you not win a championship? I simply think that the line should be dissolved. Especially when you're going and weighing into the waters of Caitlin Clark, of all people. And here's another problem with this. What did we hear during the Heatles and the Celtics with the big ticket and the truth? What did we continue hearing over and over again? Even Kobe and Powell. Super teams. You know, these super teams are just crushing the NBA. The Cavs building a super team. The Warriors building a super team. Guys wanting to leave and go to a super team. That's all that we heard about. And just going into the championship argument, I believe that the Dirk Nowitzki Dallas Mavericks team, you know, in a Stugatz way, holds more weight of a championship because they took down a super team. Not that they didn't have a good team either. They did. But that Dirk-led team, people had more value to it because they took down the Heatles, which was early. It was the onset. Nonetheless, to go after Caitlin Clark when she doesn't go join a super team, doesn't try to add to the hardware collegiately by not going to a powerhouse, that should be applauded. That shouldn't be torn down to say, I don't consider her great. She's already great. I remember listening to a podcast because, what's his name? Pat Beverly has a show with one of the guys from Barstool. And Jay Williams gave away the game a little bit. It seems like he was starting to get, I don't want to say bored, but he was feeling some type of way about his time with ESPN. And he would notice if he said something, what reaction it would get. And then coming out of commercial break, when he would be called back to a different block, he would say the complete opposite thing to see if that drew a reaction. I am telling you right now, and I'm sorry I bought into it because it's just a really bad take, but I believe he is doing this intentionally because he already owned up to changing his stance in the same exact show or a different show later on in the day on ESPN's airwaves to see the reaction. When you become the number one scorer all time, that puts you amongst the greats, no matter what. Doesn't matter how many championships you win. You are great. So to deny someone's greatness when they are quite literally the greatest scorer we have ever seen, ever, maybe it's time, if you believe this truly, to check your credentials. because this is an asinine, aloof take. What are your thoughts? Comment down below. I'll see you there.